Right, so today we are talking about Rolex stainless steel sport watches. And as many of you know, getting hold of them today is a very, very difficult thing. If you just walk into an AD, they'll usually either tell you at the very minimum there's a 2-year waiting list, and that would probably be for a Submariner. And then really Pepsi's and Daytona's are going to be north of that. Or they're just simply going to say, all our waiting lists are closed. Furthermore, it's even more difficult if you have never had a purchasing history with that AD, in which case you'll pretty much be prioritized the least out of anyone. So I got this watch from an AD who I'd never purchased from before. And so I thought I'd share how I managed to do it, and I will just put it out there. I did have a degree of luck, but the reality is that these aren't as difficult to get as people claim or want you to believe. If you're in the right place at the right time, which there is a pretty small probability of that being the case, but there's still a probability, then it is very much possible to get hold of these. So the model I'm talking about is the Submariner, which I was able to essentially get in a week's time, no waiting list, just literally exactly a week. They were able to get it in for me and actually kept it on hold for me for a couple of days because I wasn't in town. So maybe I will just start by telling you sort of the story of how this happened. So note that first of all, I am based in London. And now London is probably one of the worst places you can try and get hold of these. Just because, well, there's so many people in London, very affluent people as well, I may add, that buy, many watches a year and will always be prioritized by ADs because they prioritize their good customers. But in any case, so when I decided the time was right to try and get hold of one of these, I was adamant I would not pay over retail, so I knew the only way I was going to go was via AD. I basically made myself known to pretty much every Rolex AD in London. I went around all of Bond Street, just all over the place, really, just inquiring about this watch. And the majority of them, in fact, all of them the first time round, gave the same answer, and the answer I expected and you'd expect, which was, sorry, the waiting list is closed. The demand for that is just simply too high. To be fair, they would first ask me if I had a prior purchase history with them, to which my answer would always be no, because I've just moved to London, so I've never really bought from any AD in London. And in fact, that is not quite true. There is one AD that my mother bought herself a Rolex from. I was with her at the time. So they did know who I was, and I did tell them that, I have a prior buying history. I've bought Datejust for my mum here before in the last 2 years, and that honestly didn't help whatsoever. The waiting list was still closed, and they said it may open in a month to a couple months' time, so just call us back then to see if it's been reopened. So that's kind of the backstory. So first time around, no one said yes or even put me on a waiting list. Actually, there was one AD that did put me on a waiting list, but quoted me a 2-year waiting time. So I think I am still on a waiting list somewhere. Anyway, so the first thing, right. So now going into specifics about this particular model here. So this is Submariner 114060. This is probably, if you were to rank it, would be one of the easiest, and by easiest I mean in relative terms, to get Rolex sport watches from the ones that require a waiting list. So backtracking a little bit, Rolex Explorers are, I would say, the easiest ones to get, along with Yachtmasters. Those, I would say, you quite often, okay, not quite often, but you will see them in AD windows. And just going around London, I have seen quite a few there. So those, if you're after that model, that's fine. And even if the AD doesn't have it, I reckon if you were to ask them, they could get it to you quite quickly without really needing any sort of waiting list. So those are not the models I'm really talking about. I'm mainly talking about Submariners, Pepsis and Daytonas. Those are the ones that typically require a waiting list and that are often 2 years upwards, right? So out of those models, this is relatively speaking the easiest to get. So if you are after this particular model, what I would say is, even though it is called a Submariner, make sure when you ask them that you make it clear that you are after the Submariner no date, even though that isn't the actual official name. But make sure you tell them you're after the Submariner no date. So what I found is many conversations began with, sorry, sir, that waiting list is closed, and even if you were to get on it, it would be up for 5 years. And then after speaking for a while, then I would mention, or just to clarify, I want the no date. And then they would instantly say, oh, really? Well, that's actually a bit easier to get. Still quoted me, 2 years, but a lot of them did say, come back to us in a few months. After, at the time I'm making this video, Basel has just happened. Around Basel, I've been told that kind of Rolex deliveries sort of slow down during the month of essentially March, when Basel is held. And March, April, and then it picks up and goes back to normal. So they would tell me, get back to us in a couple months. We'll see if the waiting list has gone shorter, and we can potentially put your name on there. So that's typically what they told me. If you are after the no date, that probably wouldn't be the case, because if you are after the date model, the 116610, that would typically not be the case, because there seems to be a way higher demand for those than this model. So going back, sorry, I went a bit off track just to talk about this model specifically, but the so we left at the fact that everyone basically said waiting list or closed, or quoted me, a 2-year waiting time, whatever. Some even said they don't even have a waiting list. They just prioritize their best customers. So literally what they would do is, once they get a shipment, they would call their existing clients just to say, oh, by the way, are you interested in this? I received a Submariner today. Would you want to buy it? just thought I'd let you know before I let the sort of general public have a chance to buy it. So that's usually what happens. So after getting all these rejections, sort of I left it for a week, and then I went back. To be honest, I passed by one of the 80s I had visited previously, just because I happened to be in the area. So then I decided to just go in and just ask if they happened to get a shipment, because I knew it was, sometime after Basel, so they should be expecting a shipment. And I spoke to a different guy than the guy I spoke to the first time, who said there was no chance. And this was instantly different. I first, kind of asked more generally, started chit-chatting about, Basel World releases. I was also interested in the new Datejust 36 that they released, so I first inquired about them. I was wearing my Rolex Explorer 1, so he could see I was an enthusiast, and then I think he kind of got the idea that I was into watches. I wasn't just a flipper. I was quite passionate about it. And then I eventually, just before we ended the discussion, said, by the way, I'm also very interested in the Submariner no date. What would be the best way of going about getting one of those? And at that point, he took down my phone number, added me on WhatsApp, and said, let me see what I can do. I'll get back to you in a week. So we kind of left it at that. I didn't think any more of it. Probably I just assumed I would never hear back from him. And then exactly a week later, he sent me a message on WhatsApp saying, I have a surprise for you. Are you able to pick it up? And at the time, I was actually outside of London visiting family, so I couldn't actually get back on the day. And so, I was quite upset and thought he would actually, just go to someone else who could pick it up on the day. But then he said he would hold it for me until Monday, which is when I would be back. So they actually held it, all of Saturday. Sunday it was closed because it was, Easter break. And then Monday, so I picked it up on Monday. So that was exactly a week. Completely avoided waiting lists. I don't even know if there was a waiting list for this, and somehow I managed to get past it. But again, I had no prior history. And so that's really how it unfolded. Now you're probably thinking, well, that's just a unique freak case. That isn't really, any help to any of us. Well, I would say there are a few takeaways from this. First is persistence. So if the first time round you go there and you get a no, our waiting list is closed, it'll be many years until you can get one, you're not a past customer, blah blah blah, just leave it for a bit, and then perhaps just keep visiting different ADs occasionally, take interest in some of the other watches, and just get talking with them, not necessarily related to always going in and saying, oh, I want this Rolex, can you get it for me? But just, get to know them. And don't come across as like pressuring them. Just get to know them, get into nice talks. You'll find that a lot of these guys, are quite happy to talk to someone who knows something or two about watches, rather than just a person that has no idea and just knows that they want a Rolex and doesn't really know what it's about and doesn't have any passion about it. So just build some rapport with them, and that could be over a couple weeks, a couple months. take down, exchange details. That's always important. Usually after you've had a conversation with a guy, they should normally give you their card. If they haven't, ask for it. And just, although not saying, can you put me on the waiting list, just make sure that they are aware of what watch you actually want. And once that is the case, once they know you to the point where you can walk in the store and they will come and greet you, know you by name, they will have it in their mind that when they do receive one of these watches, you should be popping straight into their mind and saying, oh, I know a guy who will buy this straight away. I can call him now and he should be able to come in later to collect. And, you know, that I think is powerful enough to potentially, you know, bypass any waiting lists. And, you know, because they know you're a nice guy, they want to help you out, really. And for them, you know, it's no different to exactly who they sell it to. If you had a choice between two people, one being, you know, some guy who just buys watch after watch from them, perhaps not a particularly nice guy, just a guy with a lot of money, as opposed to someone who's actually taken the time to get to know them on a personal level in some senses, potentially. You know, the human aspect of you will kind of make you want to give it to the person who's treated you nicely and who's been nice to have conversations with. So that is what I would do. That is the tactic I would go with. And sort of in retrospect, I realized that is essentially probably close to what I did and how I was able to get this without specifically doing it on purpose, but now just thinking about it, I think that is what led them to sort of get me this watch and so quickly. So basically, within the week, I'd spoken to the guy, they got a new shipment, and among that shipment, there was a Submariner no date. So as I said, straight away, you know, I kind of popped into his mind. I've chatted to him before, and we exchanged details, and he messaged me straight away saying he has one. Now, again, caveat, reminder, this is probably, relatively speaking, the easiest model to get. So I'm not saying this tactic would work with a Daytona or a Batman GMT or Pepsi GMT, or even a Submariner date. However, again, the same tactics can be used. You would just have to perhaps be a bit more patient. It might take longer. You may need to purchase, you know, something from them. That would definitely help, but I would say it is not a necessity. Another thing I would say is that this model has been out for a while. So, you know, people have had, well, it came out in 2013, didn't it? So people have had 6 years to get their hands on this. A new release like the Batman, that's going to be a whole different story because that was just released. So there will be a bunch of people that don't yet own that watch that want to get that watch. So the waiting list for that would be enormous. Same goes for last year's Pepsi. Again, that's only been out for a year. But look, hey, that maybe it was all just luck in the end, but I do generally think that someone is, whether it's the media or the 80s themselves, are making these pieces seem harder to get than they actually are. there just needs to be a bit of persistence on your side to build a relationship with them. And I do not mean by necessarily purchasing stuff from them, but just being that nice guy who they always like welcome into their store, who takes an interest in their watches, and is a clear enthusiast, and someone they can trust that doesn't want to just, buy this and put it on eBay on the same day. I think those are all very important things. And essentially, don't take no for an answer. Don't be put down from them saying no the first time. It is very likely they will say no the first time because they've just met you for the first time. They know nothing about you. But just keep going back, maybe once a month, once every few weeks, to take a browse at different watches they have, and talk to different people. That's also important. As I said, the first time I talked to someone who straight away dismissed the idea of even it being possible to get one of these, and I spoke to a different guy and it wasn't the same story. So anyway, sorry for dragging this on. I hope this was somewhat useful. Just the main message is be persistent and keep trying. Just because they say no once doesn't mean they'll say no a second time or a third time, right? And if you are after a Submariner date, I'd say you are in luck, because these are definitely the easiest ones to get. Please don't buy these, on the secondhand market for ridiculous prices. It is very much possible to get these with a little bit of patience for retail price. So yeah, that's all I really have to say, guys. I hope that was helpful. Probably next few videos, I'm probably going to do perhaps a mini review of this, although, there are hundreds of reviews on this watch all over the internet, but maybe I might just give my view on it, given that I've come from a kind of older model, with all the bracelets and that kind of stuff. So maybe I could do a comparison of some sort. But otherwise, yeah, stay tuned. Thanks for watching. And I really do hope you guys get the dream watch that you're always looking for. Just put in the work. It is work. It is effort on your side to get these. And have a little patience. And I think you will get what you want eventually, and not at extortionate prices. Catch you next time.